Bart Boswell there, fresh from his ride in the Tour of Springfield. And while today's stage is focused on the final climb, it's also a long day out. The longest of the race so far, in fact, at 188 kilometres. And it does feature one other climb at the first category Mirador del Fito, so it's a harder lead-in than it was in 2014. The Lagos de Covadonga is 12 kilometres at an average gradient of just over 7%, but it stops and starts with sections much steeper, as well as some downhill runs in the final 3 kilometres. David de la Cruz and Jenny Meersman, green and red teammates, posed for the cameras at the start. And almost as soon as the race had started came news of a big crash. The cameras didn't see that, but shortly afterwards 3 of the men involved in it had to abandon. Kevin Reza of FTJ, Markel Irizar of Trek Segafredo and Bartosz Huzarski of Bora Argon 18. Eventually a large breakaway group settled down with 16 men in it, although Ethics Quick-Step and Movistar didn't seem inclined to give it too much of a lead as the race headed along the Costa Verde and into the Picos de Europa National Park.
Omar Fraile and Luis Angel Mate attacking over the penultimate climb of the day and getting themselves a little bit of an advantage on the descent. It didn't last long though. Pretty soon as the chase developed behind them from the remains of the breakaway, they clinked bidons together and they were swept up. And now the breakaway, at least 14 riders make that 13. Victor Campanets has just dropped off, having set things up, we think, for Robert Hessink, who moves to the front, the Lotto Jumbo rider. They hit the foot of the climb. 12.2 kilometres, 7.2% average gradient, but David Miller, this is a climb you know very well, and it's a bonkers gradient. It's like it's been set to shuffle. It goes up and down and does all sorts.
It's all over the place. It's very unlike a Pyrenean or Alpine climb, or even in the Dolomites, where you have mountain passes where they're very consistently built. This is very much, it's like a goat track that's been tarmacked. It's a dead end at the top. It ramps up and down. There are flat patches. There are super steep sections, which makes it quite difficult to race, because if it comes down to a small group, it becomes very tactical, because there are moments where you rest. So a weaker guy can get a break and then attack. You have the strong guy who can have somebody sitting on his wheel. It's not a classic climb in that sense, where it's just pure power to weight. It's power to weight and tactics.
Ethics Quick-Step resumed their position at the front of the peloton. It has, up until this point, though, been mostly Movistar bringing things back. 5:15 they had of an advantage about 10 or 20 kilometres further back down the road. That's been whittled down to 2:41 as they approach Covadonga.
That's the reason that you have the dead-end road. There is no mountain pass. The only reason to have the road is because of that sanctuary. But in the past, when we've had the bike racing coming here, it has been a point in the race where the break makes it. It's rarer that the peloton, the big GC guns are hunting the stage win. But the last time it happened was in 2014, and Niemiec won, and he was in a breakaway, and he had less than 4 minutes at the bottom and made it to the finish. Only just, granted, 5 seconds, but he did make it. So this is a bigger group. He'd been a smaller break that day, and it had been a shorter stage with an easier run-in. This has been a hard stage. It took really 2 hours for this move to go. It's a very strong move. There are great climbers in this group, so it's still in the balance. Normally you'd say not a chance, but it depends on how the peloton here now races, and you can see if it continues like this, they will be caught.
So the whole of the Vuelta is now on the final climb. This last big effort before rest day, stage 10, don't forget, as Louis Vervaeke from Lotto Soudal attacks Robert Hessink and moves off the front. So the talented 22-year-old Belgian climber is off, and there's no immediate response. I think Hessink, I have to say, reading his body language, doesn't look the freshest. Omar Fraile, still riding well, moves to the front, but Vervaeke has a little gap.
Well, it's a long climb, and Robert Hessink has already asked a lot of his teammate, Victor Campanets, who did so much work on the previous climb and in the build-up in the valley coming into this climb. So everybody understood immediately what Robert Hessink was interested in. He was showing a massive amount of confidence, and now he understands that everybody's going to watch him. So when he does move, everybody will chase him. And there he goes, he's moving.
There he is, Hessink. But that's quite a gap that's opened up very, very quickly to Vervaeke. They long for another GC rider, do the Belgians, to really threaten to win a Grand Tour, and they have a lot of faith in Louis Vervaeke and what the future might hold for him. Can you name the last Belgian Grand Tour winner? And a little hint here, it's not Eddy Merckx.
In that case, not a hope. No.
1978 Giro d'Italia, Johan de Munk, pure climber.
There we go, there's Pierre Rolland attacking from Cannondale Drapac. So that had to happen. Somebody had to go, and Cannondale Drapac really had to do that. As Joe Dombrowski left, so in theory he can then sit on Hessink as he chases, but it's easy to say that. It's a completely different thing to actually do it.
Well, Roland has been quite canny. He's been, well, I don't think he greatly enjoys descending, does he? So on the descents, he has been right at the back all day, but he hasn't been doing much work on the front at all. He's been largely invisible, which is the right way to go about things in a breakaway. And he's closed the gap to Fafaki very quickly.
And you have to wonder if that was the right tactic to do so early on the climb. Fafaki at the moment isn't a major threat. He was still within distance. There's still a long way to the finish. It is a complicated, as I said, a tactical climb. And maybe that's Robert Hessink, that's perfect for him. But he's getting slightly distanced as well, Robert Hessink, now. So let's hope that he wasn't overconfident and wasted a teammate for nothing, because his teammate did do a lot of work for him.
Yeah, that's Hessink in the yellow Lotto Soudal kit. Roland, still breathing. Well, I was going to say through his nose, but actually there was a puff there that indicates that effort cost him a little bit, and he's sitting on the wheel of Fafaki, just trying to recuperate now. And Igor Silin from Katusha with his future teammate, interestingly, they close the gap, and it's all coming back together again. Luis Angel Mate is still there from Cofidis.
Well, Pierre Roland exploded that group. The speed he came across at, you could see, it was it split the group to pieces trying to stay near him. And even Robert Hessink is 6 or 7 riders back now. So it's Pierre Roland, they now know that he would appear to be the strongest rider. And we see Hessink is now chasing back onto that group with Joe Dombrowski, Pierre Roland's teammate, on his wheel. But I think we're going to see this now for a while. Stop starting, the kind of the attack, the little rest phase. And as you go, another attack. So this is where it's quite annoying. Whereas behind, it's just consistently fast. So that's where the time will be made up by the peloton, because there are none of those rest phases. It's simply high tempo the whole time.
Every time there is an acceleration in that breakaway group there, it appears they shed 1 or 2 riders. That's Victor Camponet, the man who set things up for Robert Hessink. No surprise to see him, the first of those breakaway riders on the foot of the climb, swept up by Movistar.
And Robert Hessink now is chasing back on. So everybody's played him slightly, and I think he's realising that now. But that's not to say that it's over, because it is a long climb. There's just under 10 kilometres to go, and he put himself in the red, slightly at the bottom, trying to lead that group up. He was countered, and now he's just got to stay calm, and if he is feeling strong, he will get back on. And then these guys, everyone will do this. They go hard, they blow up. They go hard, they blow up. And it's whoever can play the cool game the best that ends up being the last man standing.
Meanwhile, let's have a look at the GC battle further down the road. Alejandro Valverde, just a little bit behind the wheels of his Movistar train that are leading the whole race up the slope.
That's an interesting tactical move by him. So he's let Nairo Quintana sit up there in prime position with his domestiques, and actually Alejandro Valverde, who are used to sitting in the front, has dropped back onto Alberto Contador's wheel. So he's obviously marking Contador. They obviously are a little bit worried that maybe he will try something, and it's Valverde's duty to make sure he's there. And here we have Team Sky. They've got Chris Froome, they're chasing back on. They've been distanced.
They have indeed, in the company of Jose Mendes from Bora Argon 18. So Froome, I don't quite know why, but he's in the company of JJ Rojas, and he's got a couple of teammates just trying to pace him back on. He's on the radio, and there's never much panic from Chris Froome. He doesn't mind dropping off the back of a group of favourites. In fact, he has been known to bluff, but that looks like more than a bluff.
Well, we'll know soon. We'll know very soon in the next kilometre whether there is an incident. Let's see when hear what you're saying. No, not possible.
Looks like it's about 20 seconds.
Yeah, it was just it. That's the group there. That's the Movistar group just in front. But the question is whether he'd had a slight mechanical or an issue that nobody saw or picked up on, and now they're coming back. But we'll see. If he gets back on in the next K, that means it was a mechanical issue. If he doesn't, that means he is in trouble.
Well, Cannondale started the day with 3 different cards to play. Moreno Moser has been disposed of. Joe Dombrowski may have been burning himself out, but if this is the big attack from Pierre Roland, he's got to try and make this stick. 8.9 kilometres to go. How far can he get up the road, and can he break the will of those remaining riders in the breakaway? Still a lot of talent left there in that albeit much smaller group. Meanwhile, Movistar continue to do a job on Chris Froome. What's the gap looking like? Holding at about 20 seconds, we understand.
10 seconds. So it's coming down, which is but just. I mean, it's almost static, but that's understandable when you see how hard Movistar are going.
Yeah, that was.
Just so I think it's just there. It is. That's the group. That's the red jersey group with. And also Nairo Quintana, Valverde, and you can see he keeps telling Chris Froome, I think he's really controlling their pace, because when you're a domestique in that role with your big name leader, all you want to do is get them back on. knowing your job is done when you get there. And it's the leader's job to make sure they pace it properly and don't blow you up in the process.
They've got one more rider in that group, have Team Sky. I think it must be David Lopez, who is will be just waiting, obviously not working, and I don't think Koenig will be able to offer much more, having done this huge effort to bring Chris Froome back once he gets, assuming that they make contact with that group. Andre Zeitz is in there, so too is Darwin Etapuma.
You've just got to keep a cool head in that situation, because Movistar are burning through their matches really quickly at the moment, and the moment they've run out of domestiques, there'll be a big pause, and that's the moment where you count on that, and that could happen. There's still 8Ks to go, and at the rate they're going at Movistar, they're going to run out of riders in 2 or 3 kilometres, in which case Team Sky have to anticipate that, wait for that moment to pause, and then they'll bridge back on in the space of 30 seconds a minute, because there'll be this massive stalemate moment. But you can see the speed they're still going at. But that's, let's see. Now Alberto Contador realises this is it's full game on here.
Movistar, Etixx Quick-Step, Contador moving ominously close to the front of the race now. What's he got in mind as Hessink does battle to try and get onto the wheel of Igor Silin, who's the second rider on the road. Pierre Rolland hasn't got away. This group has not given up, and Dombrowski is a possible stage winner as well. But under 8 kilometres to go, Pierre Rolland for Cannondale Drapac has the lead of the race. They have a 1 minute and 40-second advantage to do the breakaway over a very, very interesting red jersey group. Chris Froome is still being paced back on. There he is, still relying on the services of Leopold Koenig and Piet Keniuk. But every time he looks up, he's just seeing the back of the convoy of cars following that group of GC favourites. Koenig just glances across to see how his leader is doing. But this is a brutal and difficult struggle to get back on for Chris Froome. We don't know. We don't know the reason why he was dropped off the group of favourites, but that is the situation on the road, and he hasn't made contact with the back of that group yet. He's losing time on this climb so far, but if anyone can measure an effort on a long-form climb like this, it is the man who won the Tour de France for the 3rd time this summer.
It is, and normally you have to admit that's only 6 riders, I think, now at the very sharp end of the race. So that's means that it really has gone flat out. They understand that Chris Froome, the Tour de France reigning champion, is being distanced. That motivates everybody. So you have, I think it's Lopez, I think it's Koenig, it's Lopez and Piet Keniuk. And that he's got to hold those, and Lopez goes. So that's it. He's down to just Keniuk. So now it's up to Keniuk. He's got to do one of the biggest jobs he's ever done in cycling to try and help his team leader. And they've just got a damage limitation. They don't necessarily have to get back onto that group. They just have to make sure they've lost as little time as possible come the finish line.
That's the group of favourites. Quintana's in there, Valverde's in there in the white jersey, Alberto Contador is there too. There's Michele Scarponi from Team Astana, one of the Orica Bike Exchange riders. I think it's
Valverde's just blown. So Valverde's just blown. He flicked his elbow. You could see his face. He shook. He's like, I can't do this. So he knew Nairo Quintana was on his wheel, and he was like, I can't. So that goes to show how flat out they're going at the moment, which is, and I think there's a Team Sky rider. I don't know, maybe that's Koenig, who's dropping back to help. That looks like Simon Yates, who's there in between as well. This is in pieces. And you would never expect to see it like this normally, but because of Chris Froome being distanced, that's activated everybody. There's David de la Cruz as well. So he's doing a really good fight considering what he did yesterday.
David de la Cruz in the red leaders jersey had only 22 seconds to defend from Nairo Quintana in 2nd place in the general classification. Chris Froome is in all sorts of trouble here. Looking up the road, he's only got Piet Keniuk to help him pace himself back on. Louis Meintjes now sits on his wheel, having dropped out of that group of favourites. And one of the Movistar riders, I think, is Ruben Fernandez, who's done his job for Nairo Quintana, and Alejandro Valverde drops back to this group, small group of 3 riders, where Chris Froome is struggling once again on this climb, where he hurt, don't forget, 2 years ago. That time it was Alberto Contador amongst a 3-pack of Spanish riders who attacked him repeatedly. This time, a different set of circumstances, but potentially a more serious result for his attempt to win the Vuelta. 6.7 kilometres for the breakaway still to go, so they haven't even reached the halfway point of this climb. Although it's a consistently steep gradient in the first few kilometres, David,
Robert Hess is distancing now Pierre Rolland. He's blowing him up, so you can see that. So this is what I was saying before about this climb, it's ramps. And Robert Hessing really is he's cracked Pierre Rolland there somewhat. So now he's got to push on because it will ease off. Look at the way Pierre Rolland's looking back. He realises he can't do anything about what's going on in front. He has to see what's coming up to now judge what he's going to do tactically.
So Rolland is already thinking about the rider behind him and not the rider who's going away in front. Even though he looks laboured and he doesn't look comfortable, it's effective. Robert Hessink is getting away from the best of what remains of that breakaway group.
This is a great ride for Robert Hessing. Here we have Chris Froome. So there you go. There's the red jersey just in front. So he's
Contador attacks. He goes and he takes Nairo Quintana with him. So the recovery for Alberto Contador, the Spaniard, continues, still strapped heavily from that big crash on his left elbow and his left leg. And Quintana goes over the top of him. Can Contador respond? And if he can get on the wheel of Quintana, which he can for now, how long can he live with this Colombian? And how many more times will Quintana try and accelerate away from all of the rest of the favourites? This is a man on form, but look at Contador responding.
This is pure climbers. This is what they do. Look at them. Very rarely in modern cycling have we seen two climbers that really are like this. Alberto Contador and Nairo Quintana, they accelerate, they pause, they accelerate, they pause. And this climb is the perfect climb for that, because you have the steep sections. It's always pace changing. It's for somebody like Chris Froome, or let's say Bradley Wiggins, or the big Miguel Indurain. These are the sort of climbs that the real time trial riders that base it on this constant rhythm hate this. But Alberto Contador and Nairo Quintana, they are in their element. Robert Hessing, he has paces. We hope this at the bottom. He was confident. Everyone knew that. He put his teammates on beforehand. Now, this is the best situation possible for Chris Froome, because there's no domestiques left. They went so hard at the beginning to distance him. Now it's Alberto and Nairo Quintana. And look, they're with Fellini, so they've slowed right down. Those are the remnants of the breakaway. So this means that the time gap will come back. Now they're going to wait and then attack each other again. There's Valverde being paced up by, I think, Moreno. So it's all over the place. But this is the dream scenario to have those two up there playing games.
In terms of the GC race, you've got Contador and Quintana. Scarponi is the next best rider. Just going out of your screen there, well, in the dark blue and the white helmet, that's Gianluca Brambilla. And here is Alejandro Valverde with Danny Moreno. They're the next two of the GC racers. What else is coming back up the mountain? That's Esteban Chavez is there with Sammy Sanchez from BMC. Meanwhile, the red jersey, well, he's further back down the road and he's watching his lead evaporate here.
And the Team Sky riders are just around. There's George Bent. Team Sky are just in front. So they've passed. They've reeled that in. So this is what they've got to do now.
Froome's on his own, though.
Here you go. Alberto Contador, he understands now. If he's going to make time, he never anticipated a stage like this. He can put time into the people. He's sitting back. He lost time in the team time trial after the crash as well, being injured. But he didn't. This is it. This is the moment for him to distance and him and Nairo Quintana to work together.
It's a major opportunity for Alberto Contador to get himself right back into the Vuelta. We never thought about this before today, but how about this situation? 1 minute and 12 seconds separated Alberto Contador and Chris Froome at the beginning of the day. That might well be
so this
approachable
is
for Alberto Contador.
Chris Froome's used up Pete Kenya. Now he's on. Now he's got to do it all in himself. I think he's got one teammate left ahead. I think we haven't seen the images yet. I presume Koenig hasn't been caught yet, which would be a dream for him if that's the case. But we can see this is the familiar style of Chris Froome when he's in full flight, and he's bridging back up to the Sammy Sanchez group. So that's good. So maybe he's just been biding his time, had a bad start, and now he's used up his teammates cleverly, and he's just going to go full gas. There you go. He does have a teammate there, and I believe that's Koenig, which is the dream scenario for Chris Froome. He's just done that big bridge across, and now Koenig will know he's coming, and hopefully he's rested up a bit and not been going at his threshold in order to help. We'll soon find out if Koenig was informed of the situation and was told to do that.
Exactly right, that was Leo Koenig. My mistake, I mistook him for David Lopez earlier on, but he was the Team Sky rider who was sent up the road, and he's waited for Chris Froome, and they've played that tactic very well today. Still don't know why Chris Froome was off the back, but he's responding all right. He's measuring his losses at the moment, and he's doing all he can. This is what Chris Froome does on the Vuelta. It hurts him, this race. He's finished twice. He's finished in second place. Once he's finished in fourth. And even then, when he wasn't even on the podium, he tried and he battled and he tried to limit his losses. It's valiant stuff, but this is hurting. And Quintana, I think, is riding himself into the red jersey once again, having dispensed of the leader of the day, David de la Cruz. He's almost dispensed of everyone else. Just one rider able to live with Nairo Quintana at the moment, and it just happens to be Alberto Contador.
And there's still 5Ks to go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in pieces. We normally see this with 2Ks to go, a K to go. It will be hurting massively, but 5Ks, that still is enough time. They can see Alejandro Valverde at the bottom.
Well, there's Chris Froome. He's got Adam Yates and Esteban Chavez just to use now and pace himself back on. But at some point, I think he's going to have to try and get past them and see if he can get any time back on Contador and Quintana, who are disappearing up the road and into a very changed Vuelta at the end of the day. Robert Hessink still has the race lead all on his own. He's got 4.7 kilometres to go. A couple of short descents within the final 3 kilometres, but he's got to get there first. And he's got to get there with an advantage over these two men, in particular, Nairo Quintana and Alberto Contador, who've exploded the GC race. You can see the pain on the face of Omar Fraile, one of the original riders in the breakaway. Pierre Rolland and Igor Céline, 3 of the other breakaway riders as well, and they are just about hanging on to the coattails of Contador and Quintana. But the pace is infernal behind, and Hessink is going to have his work cut out to defend that lead against those riders.
So it looks like this graphic at the top, there you go, yeah, group number 5 is Chris Froome. Now, groups is a big word. There's groups of 2 or 3 riders scattered everywhere. So, 40 seconds, he's totally in the game still, Chris Froome. He hasn't exploded. This will be interesting to find out what it was that caused that gap at the bottom, because since that initial gap, he's really paced it well. And maybe that was his plan. Maybe that's what he learned the last time. Now, he's gone straight by, dropped Simon Yates, now it's just him and Chavez. So Chris Froome really is winding up, and maybe this is all a big tactic of his. It's a courageous tactic, but it seems to be he's reeling everybody back in again.
He's certainly chipping away at that time advantage that Contador has eked out over him. If the race were to stop now, he'd still have at least 30 seconds advantage over Alberto Contador. It's coming down fast now, just about 27 seconds separating Froome and Contador.
Well, he just took 10 seconds out in the space of a few hundred metres when he dropped Simon Yates. So you can see that's it. He'll be able to see in 22 seconds, under 30 seconds, just under 30 seconds. That means they're only a couple of hundred metres up the road in a climb this steep. So he can see them. He's got the cars there, the motorbikes. He's got it in sight. And as you see, he's dropped Chavez. He's coming up to Fellini, Valverde, and there they are, just at the corner there. That's what he's aiming for.
It's a monstrous ride from Chris Froome. He's at it again, isn't he? Responding from a pretty hopeless position and digging in deep. And everyone else who went early will be dreading the appearance of this man. He got straight past Valverde.
He didn't just go straight past him, he attacked him. Look at this bit. Look at how Fellini just got dropped immediately. He accelerated past. Chris Froome is actually fine. He's physically appears to be fine. He's controlled this to perfection. Now he's coming back up. There they are. They're just around the corner. That's the corner. They've just come around there. Chris Froome's just coming up to that. So he is probably 100, 200 metres behind, if that.
Big acceleration from Nairo Quintana, not the first time, and Contador right onto him as well. They've still got Scarponi and Fraile in that group of 4. Meanwhile, up the road, still with about 35 seconds to defend, Robert Hessink has not sat down on that saddle since he first attacked. His legs, oh well, now he does. His legs must be in bits. This is a huge effort, and he's still just about got a possibility here, because only about 700 metres before he gets a little bit of respite on a descent. Then it kicks up again, another descent, and then a nasty last 100 metres to contend with as well. All that's still to come. Scarponi is dropped. Fraile just about hanging on to Contador, and this time Contador is struggling to respond to the latest attack from Nairo Quintana.
We're actually seeing Nairo Quintana breathing properly. The poker face is going there, and Alberto Contador, and he puts in the big ring, Alberto Contador. And this is what I was saying about this climb. Now it flattens off the descent, so you could see that Alberto Contador knew that was coming, let it distance a bit, didn't go too far in the red, got to the top, put in the big ring. Now we'll get back on in the descent, hopefully, for him.
The white jersey group on your screen, that is the Chris Froome group, because he's alongside Alejandro Valverde, and it looks like they only have about 10 seconds back to the group of Contador, but Contador in turn has been dropped by about 6 or 7 seconds to this man who is the second rider on the road, Nairo Quintana, pretty much within sight soon of Robert Hessink. Right in the balance. Wherever you look on this race, it is fascinatingly poised.
Well, everyone's going at it now. Then you see, actually, it looks like so Quintana was involved in that crash earlier as well. Looks like his jersey's all ripped up.
Good spot. Good spot.
So, yeah, it looks like Quintana in an earlier crash we didn't get to see on TV. He was. It would appear that must have been what affected him. But the fact his jersey's all ripped up. It would be great if we could get this helicopter to pan back and show slightly, because Quintana 8 seconds. There he is. Here he's coming.
Oh, he's coming right across. Oh, Hessink stopped virtually on the road. He is slowing. He's going about half the speed of Nairo Quintana at this point in the race. I wonder if the Dutchman has finally cracked. And there, just what you're talking about, a great big hole in his racing jersey on the back.
Yeah, so it's odd that we weren't told about that before. So.
Well, we know Atapuma and Brambilla came down in that crash and were delayed at least and had to chase back on, but no word of Nairo Quintana's mishap until now. But if he was hurt, he's not showing any signs of it as he closes the gap to Robert Hessink, and heartbreak for the Dutchman. Beautifully set up, and he looked like he had it within his grasp, but he didn't expect this massive GC race, and Chris Froome closes the wheel to Alberto Contador. That is all over. I mean, it was a brilliant ride from Contador, but you have to take your hat off to this man's resilience.
And interesting to see Omar Fraile's just still there, so Quintana's simply flying at the moment.
That arch would indicate that the lone leader on the road, the Colombian, has 2 kilometres to go, and he is about to ride himself into the red leader's jersey as Contador now pays for his earlier efforts. He lived with Quintana for an amazingly long time, but he's beginning to be dropped by Chris Froome, who's gone past him and will be putting time into the Spaniard.
And let's not forget that the climb, if you like, finishes at 1.2 k's to go. So there's only about 800 metres, only about a kilometre left of real climbing for Chris Froome, less than that for probably about 800 metres left for Nairo Quintana. Then they drop down, got to descend, and the last 200 metres ramp up. So that's really the finish line for these riders, because they're not going to lose any time, they're not going to make time in that last K, 1.2 k's.
Oh, finally, Alejandro Valverde sits up and can no longer hold the wheel of Chris Froome. I was just about to say, David, that's an amazing recovery from Valverde, who we saw in trouble earlier on when he was effectively dropped by his teammate, but only now does he concede to Chris Froome.
They're all paying the price for thinking that Chris Froome was distanced. And if that was a planned tactic, which I'd love to know, it is a stroke of genius, because by distancing himself, everyone played cards they wouldn't have played normally. They all got excited, used up all their teammates, went deep into the red at the bottom, whereas Chris Froome didn't, knowing that he could then peg them back in the second half and drop them.
I don't think anyone is going to get to Nairo Quintana. He's got 1K and he's riding himself to a stage win on the Vuelta, and 30 seconds that he has of an advantage. The red jersey, it's all over for David de la Cruz. He might have harboured ambitions to hold on to the jersey. His team certainly worked very hard for him today, but it's all over for Etixx Quick-Step in terms of their lead for the day.
Great ride by these 2 riders, Robert Hessink and Omar Freire. Goes to show that Chris Froome is now the second GC rider on the road. Nairo Quintana ahead, 31 seconds. These 3 riders, but all the other GC riders have been distanced. When about 8 kilometres ago, we thought Chris Froome was one that was going to have the worst day today of the GC riders.
It's going to kick up now. He's in the barrier section. Nairo Quintana is about to cross the line. He's got 300 metres to go. Let's see what advantage he takes over the rest of the race when he comes over the finishing line. A great win by Nairo Quintana. Absolutely done by brute strength. Timed his attack cleverly. He rode everyone else off his wheel. He is in the form of his life once again, Nairo Quintana, and if he's not going to win the Vuelta this year, it's going to have to be somebody very, very special who's going to deny him. Perhaps they're still in the race though. Perhaps Chris Froome is that man. Perhaps Contador can still come back on Nairo Quintana over the coming 2 weeks of racing. But that's a big statement. That's a great win by Nairo Quintana. Chris Froome will come over the line in second place, I think, or will Robert Hessink be able to get past him? Don't forget that there's a bonus seconds available for the first 3 riders across the road. Robert Hessink gets the better of Chris Froome. It was an astonishing ride from Chris Froome. He's going to lose time to Nairo Quintana. Hessink will take himself a very creditable second place. Chris Froome crosses the line 25 seconds down on Nairo Quintana. Omar Freile gets 4th, which will mean he's the king of the mountains. Alejandro Valverde recovers to 5th place. Where, though, is Alberto Contador? Here he is, not too far back down the road, but it's another bruising day from a brave, brave rider, Alberto Contador. I thought he might be able to ride all the way to the top with Nairo Quintana. In the end, though, that bruised and battered body could not quite do it for the Spaniard. It let him down in the end. Esteban Chavez has recovered somewhat, and I think he's just going to rub salt into those wounds for Alberto Contador by screaming past him with 25 metres to go up this steep little climb towards the finishing line. Chavez, the next rider across the line. There's Contador. Simon Yates not far behind him from Orica Bike Exchange, and over they continue to come. He's the winner, though. Nairo Quintana barely looks as though he's been breathing. He will be the next leader of the Vuelta. After David de la Cruz, it's back to Movistar, and it's back to Nairo Quintana.
David de la Cruz himself was 3 minutes 15 back in 32nd place, but nonetheless he rode up the Vuelta's great climb in the red jersey, which not many riders have done. There's the result, 24 seconds on the line between Quintana and Hessink, with Froome another second behind. Those 3 riders also picking up bonuses of 10, 6 and 4 seconds. Fraile, Valverde and Scarponi came in together at 28 seconds, and they were the last men within a minute of the winner. Esteban Chavez, Alberto Contador and Simon Yates were at 102, 105 and 109. Peter Kenyuk, after his hard work on the lower part of the climb for his team leader, came in 26th at 2 minutes 25.
Pete, we saw you play the role of ace, super domestique there for Chris Froome, but you look like you're suffering now.
Oh God, that hit. Yeah, it was kind of the plan. You know, it was a long climb to sort of not go into the red and risk blowing towards the top. So yeah, David Lopez did a great job as well in the first couple of K, and then I just did what I could. Tried to ride at Froome's pace for as long as possible, and then yeah, just had to leave him to it.
Yeah, we know that Movistar will try to attack from the bottom of the climb. They start very high pace, and as we know this, we just keep our pace, and he was able to keep to the top and don't lose so many time.
So there was no panic.
Yeah, well, for me, he was controlling, but for me it's a little bit panic when we see 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and then we know Quintana starts attacking. But yeah, at the end it was a good day. We are still less than 1 minute in the GC. We still have the time trial and some mountain finish, so yeah, I think it was a good day to, now we go into the rest day, and we start thinking in the final of the Vuelta.
Still a long way to go in this race, and anything can happen. You know, today was really the first proper real mountain stage, so say it most years that the Vuelta ends up almost being the most exciting race, and I think it's showing it again.
And the source of most of the excitement since the race hit the mountains has been Nairo Quintana, for whom rather surprisingly this was a first Vuelta stage win. Omar Fraile led the King of the Mountains competition from stage 3 to Madrid last year. He takes the polka dot jersey into the rest day. And Alejandro Valverde is the new leader of the points competition. The Vuelta, of course, awarding the same points at mountain finishes as sprint stages. And Valverde is still second overall by a second from Chris Froome, although they're both nearly a minute down on Quintana. Esteban Chavez and Alberto Contador complete a select top 5, but they're at 2:09 and 2:54. Behind them, it's Koenig, De La Cruz, Yates, Scarponi and Sanchez. And behind them, the gaps only get bigger. Well, all Colombians are celebrating today, the day their country officially enters a new era of peace. Nairo Quintana just adds to the gaiety of the nation.
Claro que me llena mucho de dejar mi nombre en esta montaña tan bonita y de la manera que lo hicimos junto con el equipo, porque sin el gran equipo no hubiera podido.
Cuando has decidido atacar, ¿es porque has visto a Froome en problemas o porque te has visto tú muy bien?
Me he visto bien, veía que veníamos pocos. El gran ritmo que ha puesto Rubén Fernández para nosotros ha sido muy bueno. Y ya se le acababa cuando ha comenzado a hacer el ataque Alberto. Y bueno, he seguido luego yo.
Pero Froome es Froome. Ha venido, como siempre, de menos a más y ha acabado entrando segundo detrás de ti. La distancia que tienes, la diferencia de casi un minuto, no quiere decir nada, ¿no?
No, sigue muy cerca en cara de lo que viene. Tendremos que buscar y seguir haciendo lo que hemos venido haciendo hasta ahora para poder alejarlo más, porque si lo dejamos llegar con ese tiempo, sigue siendo el gran favorito.
Cuando hablas de dejar llegar con ese tiempo es a la contrarreloj, ¿no? ¿Con qué tiempo deberías llegar?
Por lo menos con 3 minutos.